Breaking news today. British intelligence reveals Russia's embarrassing gaffe under Putin. Vladimir Putin's Russian military is currently too berlebihan to launch a counterattack against Ukrainian forces. According to an intelligence briefing released on Thursday by the UK Ministry of Defence, MOD, Russia has had very few troops capable of launching large-scale new attacks since Putin launched the war in February 2022. This MOD assessment came about after Ukrainian officials and Western analysts reported that Kyiv had made progress in its balancing attack against the invasion of Russia's armed forces. Following the success of operations in the south of Zaporizhia and near the Bakhmut settlement in the Donetsk region, Ukraine has launched a series of high-level attacks against the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Crimea over the past few weeks. The most recent intelligence briefing from MOD focused on Russia's decision this week to send troops from newly formed cavalry units to the front lines, a move labeled extremely concerning by the think tank Institute for the Study of War, ISW, at the beginning of the month. According to a MOD report published by Newsweek on Friday, the 28th of September 2023, since the end of September 2023, Russia has likely accelerated the implementation of the provisions of the 25th Constitutional Amendment, 25 CAA, for the first time. 2 units from the 25th CAA were reported to be on the front lines in the western Severodonetsk and Kreminna sectors along the border between the oblasts of Donetsk and Luhansk, as reported by MOD. The British agency in question claims that Putin's military campaign in Ukraine was hampered by the use of the 25th Amendment. Russia has rarely been able to hold large groups of troops that could form the basis of new, large-scale attacks, according to the Ministry of Defense, MOD. Newly coordinated attacks from Russia are unlikely in the coming weeks, despite the presence of 25 CAA that appear to have been implemented piecemeal in an effort to strengthen troops along overly extended borders. When ISW reported on the reduction of 25 CAA in its assessment on September 1, the organization claimed that the Kadangan reported was used to aid soldiers from Russia's 41st Army Division, making their relational effectiveness greater. According to reports, CAA K-41 has been fighting against the Kyiv bombing operation on a limited rotation to allow the troops time to recover. ISW also notes that 25 CAA, Tita Munkin Effektif dalam Pertempuran dalam Skala Besar Mengingat Penampatanya Yang Terburu Buru, and possibly Sangat Kekurangan Staff. Putin's claims that Ukraine is not a country and that Ukrainians are Russians indicate his intention to commit genocide. One need not have his knowledge to see this. Because of the large Jewish communities in both Russia and Ukraine, Jews are caught in the middle of Vladimir Putin's conflict with Ukraine. Although the official Jewish populations of Russia and Ukraine are respectively 150,000 and 45,000, these numbers significantly undercount the actual Jewish populations of both countries. The combined population eligible for Israeli citizenship according to the law of return may be close to 1 million due to massive assimilation and intermarriage during 80 years of communism and Soviet anti-Semitism, during which offspring of mixed parentage were encouraged to inscribe a nationality, ethnic group other than Jewish, on their internal passports. Jews in Russia and Ukraine are actively participating in this conflict. Jewish leaders in Ukraine include President Volodymyr Zelensky and former Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov. Vladimir Solovyev, a prominent propagandist, and Yevgeny Prigozhin, the late founder of the Wagner Private Army, are 2 examples of prominent Jewish Russians. Both nations hold central positions in Jewish tradition. More than 20% of the world's Jewish population called the areas that are now Russia and Ukraine home in 1939. Many of the current Jewish denominations can trace their roots back to that geographic region. The fact that members of the Breslov Hasidic sect travel to Ukraine every year to pay their respects at the tomb of Rebbe Naaman in Uman is further evidence of this. And the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, was born in what is now Ukraine's Mykolaiv, raised in Yekaterinoslavl, now Dnipro, and attended university in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, to study engineering. Zionism's origins can also be traced to the Ukraine and Russia. Golda Meir was born in Kyiv, while Zeev Jabotinsky came from Odessa. Even the Habima Theater, which David Ben-Gurion designated as Israel's national theater in 1958, was established in Moscow in 1918 and relocated to Tel Aviv in 1928. But there is a fundamental reason why Jews everywhere, even those who live thousands of miles away from this conflict, are concerned about the Russian war in Ukraine, regardless of the history or presence of Jewish communities in that region. As soon as they get rid of them, however. An ancient Armenian parable tells of a dying patriarch who addresses his family with parting words of wisdom. He utters the words, "My dearest," in a low voice. "You need to keep the Jews safe." The gathered relatives ask him in shock, "Why the Jews, Grandpa?" "That's right. They'll turn on us after they exterminate the Jews." This narrative gets to the heart of antisemitism. Rarely is antisemitism an isolated incident targeted solely at Jews. In fact, it is inextricably linked to hostility toward a wide range of others, including members of different races, religions, and sexual orientations. Although Hitler personally murdered 6 million Jews, his genocidal policies affected many other groups, including the Roma, the Poles, the Ukrainians, the Russians, and the homosexuals. In the United States, the Anti-Defamation League was established in 1913, not only to stop the defamation of the Jewish people, but also to secure justice and fair treatment for all. As stated on their website, the Anti-Defamation League was founded on the clear understanding that the fight against one form of prejudice cannot succeed without battling prejudice in all forms. The 1948 Genocide Convention was signed in response to the Holocaust of the Jewish people. It defined genocide and required signatories to punish those responsible for genocide. There is no denying the special meaning that the word genocide holds for Jews. Putin is now claiming that he launched his aggressive war against Ukraine to prevent the genocide of the Russian-speaking minority in that country. This is an outright falsehood. Donetsk and Luhansk aren't the only cities in eastern Ukraine where Russian is spoken. Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa, and even Kyiv, the capital, are all Russian-speaking as well. Hitler's strategy consisted largely of laying blame for his wrongdoings on others. He insisted that Germany was seeking peace but was being forced to go to war by its adversaries. The Jews planned to starve the good Germans and their children, so they only had themselves to blame for their own annihilation. The Nazi leader claimed that he was merely trying to prevent the Jews from killing off all Germans. The International Court of Justice has ruled against Putin's claim of genocide in Ukraine. Russian war aims in Ukraine constitute genocide, as American historian Professor Timothy Snyder explained at last year's Elie Wiesel Memorial Lecture at the Boston University Center for Jewish Studies. Snyder has written extensively on the topic of mass murder, with a particular emphasis on the area that includes modern-day Ukraine, Belarus, and Western Russia and coincides with the homes of the vast majority of Holocaust victims. Putin's claims that Ukraine is not a country and that Ukrainians are Russians, as well as Russian propagandists' claims that those Ukrainians who persist in defending their identity should be exterminated, don't require his level of knowledge to be recognized for what they are: acts of genocide. Any Jew with a sense of history will hear these murder accusations as particularly heinous. In addition, the Jewish state, which was established after the Holocaust with the promise, "never again," must take a clear stance in support of the Ukrainian side of the conflict.